In this lesson, we'll take a closer look at Ambulocetus and the Basilosaurid and see how they actually aren't transitional/intermediate fossils. Ambulocetus is claimed to be an intermediate between a land mammal, something likely with paws, and a whale, a cetacean, something whale-like. However, it's actually just regular, run-of-the-mill land mammal. Its parts that are recognized as land mammal parts are its well-functioning fore and hind limbs for terrestrial mobility, its flukeless tail, its nostrils that are clearly not at all a blowhole, its pelvis, its heterodont dentation, meaning it has different kinds of teeth, like how we have incisors, canines, and molars, and really its complete rest of its entire anatomy. The only part really claimed to be cetacean-like is its ear bones. Looking at its ear bones, they are incredibly similar to those of what is called the Pakicetus, which is the major claimed intermediate that's put just before Ambulocetus in the proclaimed macroevolutionary sequence. And the sequence from the pawed land mammals to whales, Pakicetus is one of the first few, and Ambulocetus is just after it. Well, the only true similarities with cetacean ear bones with those of the Pakicetus and Ambulocetus is that it's structured for underwater hearing. But, looking at these bones, do you really see that much similarity? Are they honestly shaped that much alike? Or do they just share a very general structure for underwater hearing? The Basilosaurid kind is also considered an intermediate between land mammals and whales. However, it is neither. It's actually just a non-cetacean sea mammal, even though it was first thought to be a reptile, hence Basilosaurid. Its so-called land mammal parts are its hind limbs that are really nothing much more than the hind limbs of the legged snakes, which if you haven't seen that lesson, go see it and you'll know what I'm talking about. And then there's its skull, which, yes, is heterodont as well, and has no blowhole nor room for a melon organ, which is what cetaceans use for sonar. However, if that's really it, then it's really not that land mammal-like, is it? And then its claimed cetacean parts are its forelimbs and fluke, meaning like its tail flippers, if you don't know what that is. But looking at the forelimbs, they're not entirely certain for having a flipper shape. I mean, and they're most likely not. Not all like a whale's. On the left, you have a Basilosaurid forelimb. On the right, you have an orca forelimb. Now, how similar are these? Not really at all. Shoulder blades not shaped the same. The metacarpals are not at all similar. Neither are the ulna or the humerus. They're not all the same shape or proportion. They're only incredibly roughly relatively similar. Also, the elbow joint on the Basilosaurid is far more similar to that of a seal than a whale. So it would be easier to claim it has a relation to seals than cetaceans. When it comes to the Basilosaurid fluke, which have a fluke of a whale pictured in the upper right corner, there's a lot of degree of uncertainty when it comes to it. And really, when it comes to flukes in the macroevolutionary land mammal to whale sequence, because there's some degree of uncertainty to when the fluke actually comes into existence in that sequence, and it's theorized to serve different functions in many genera than from the cetacean, meaning even if it has a fluke, doesn't mean it has to function the way a whale's does at all. Also, there are just many other issues with Basilosaurids being claimed as an intermediate between land mammals and cetaceans, which is why they're denied as cetacean ancestors by some macroevolutionists. They're said by some to have existed at the same time as still existing cetaceans, which totally messes up the excuse me, mainstream sequence of the macroevolution. Also, they're still not even close to having a blowhole. In the picture on the right, to the left, you have Artiocetus, which is a little after Ambulocetus, still a land creature. You have a Basilosaurid in the middle, and then on the right, you have a cetacean. Also, Basilosaurids have eel-like serpentine bodies, which there's nothing else like that in the sequence, and it's very interesting to the creature. And there was just tons of initial confusion when it was discovered. It was first thought to be a reptile, hence why it's called hence why they're called Basilosaurids, which means king lizards. And also there's this huge list of reclassifications. So if there's that much confusion and when it's initially discovered and that much reclassification that needs to be gone on, the certainty of it being an intermediate in the macroevolution sequence is incredibly low then.